Hello friends, my name's Mara Eve Robbins and I am here next to this unnamed tributary of Meredith Creek, which is down that way, engaged in responsible social distancing, so I'm well off the beaten path, and I'm inviting you to join me for a project I'm calling Creekside Poems. It is March 30th of 2020, and this poem is called After Allen Ginsberg and the Full Moon on Buddha's Birthday. Sometimes I'm too soft to say what's actually inside me, that I'm still learning my own language, that the act of performance is usually an act of protection as well as of sharing. It's calculated. I've rarely entered the words that I read out loud. Only a few are absorbed to access at will or whim or as a coping mechanism. Last night, the moon was closer to Earth than it will be again all year. I tell about the moon repetitiously because the moon has always been its own poem, and absorbing it on the un-mown hill next to my house was reading what I could of gravity and light. Soft like a sponge, I absorb. I absorb light sometimes, but finding out that 2/3 of our brain is devoted to danger made me think about how I perceive. Allen Ginsberg spent 8 months in a psychiatric hospital. Carl Solomon was a patient there, a friend to him, a man deeper in his own crazy than Allen, simmering in the aftershocks of treatment. I saw Allen once. I was 14 and so immersed in my own lack of logic that there was little conception of legend. Recitations of Blake as he beat out the rhythm on his knees and sang, and I thought, lyrics, huh. Last night the moon sang her ancestors' songs. She sang about Buddha. She sang fire songs and wind songs and loved the coverlet clouds. She sang short songs of soft rain that gently brushed my shoulders. Then I slept. When the moon is bright, I often cannot sleep, but this week took me further than I'd been for a while after being stuck in my own redemption. I am not a coupon. I still cannot deem myself redeemed. Allen Ginsberg never thought Hell would be published. He was terrified of what his father, a poet, would think of his honesty. He wrote it for himself, for Carl, for Peter, who also saw Moloch through bitter peyote. He wrote it for Jack Kerouac and slipped into the meat of it, let himself drift through his life on the words for a while. His celebrity rose on charges of obscenity. When I look at you, I see you through my own softness. I don't anticipate danger. Amending my own vulnerability with common sense, I still imagine humanity. I meet eyes. I smile. It's more difficult to admit this than to tell you about the more difficult things, blood and breath and trauma. I could tell you about trauma, but I'm hesitant to call it forth. There's a rift between compassion and sympathy, and I couldn't always explain the gaps. There are other stories. One goes like this. When I was 11 years old, I had a goat with curly horns named Guinevere. I was not afraid of her. I read to her in the barn after milking stories of her name. Half a century later, there are still those who question Allen's acceptance into the canon. Is there a canon now? Computers find lines and iambic pentameter, arrange them into sonnets through the agenda of rhyme. Every Tuesday, I count syllables on my fingers and sweep an ancient form I estimate into the dustpan of collective consciousness. Last night, the moon did not bleed. The moon celebrated refraction and renovation and the part of transformation where you dissolve before emerging. Last night, I floated for a while on not knowing. I didn't embrace or taste or measure myself against my fear. I was small enough to sleep. Allen I have a daughter. Alan, I never questioned what my father would think of my words. Alan, I still fear what my fear has offered me. Alan, I wish I could see the filmed vibrancy of your incandescence through the haze of psychedelics I don't take anymore. Alan, you rewrote new verses for Amazing Grace, and I might sing them even though my voice is not as startlingly beautiful as my daughter's was at 8 years old. Alan, I am so tired. I'm soft today. You could redeem me easily. Take this mess into your ears and tell me, despite my priorities, despite credits, awards, and pieces of paper that I still haven't hung on my wall, things about my life that I'm not even sure I intended. Instead, I leave poems on voicemail and craft responses to replies and leave this with you, softly, to conceive. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Thanks for listening.